American presidents have enjoyed stints of explosive economic growth due to a boom in oil and natural gas production. As president, would you be willing to sacrifice some of that growth, even knowing potentially that it could displace thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of blue-collar workers in the interest of transitioning to that greener economy?
The answer is yes.
That's a problematic answer. Even if indeed the answer that you want to give is yes, that's somewhat of a problematic answer. The American public and the left may not believe me on this, but it is very true. The public, you won't get into office on a Green New Deal alone. You can get into office, implement what you would implement that would make their lives better, and they would allow you to do a Green New Deal. There's a subtle difference in those things. The public will be on board for a Green New Deal, fair enough, but the material interests of the public matters that much more. The public is going to vote on their material interests. Climate change, even though they can see it around them, even though they may have concern about it, ultimately, whether they can pay for their kid, whether they can pay for their rent, whether they can pay for their car note, whether they can pay for their health bill, whether they can pay for their school loans, all of these things that dig into them materially are always going to matter that much more than something that is a little bit more esoteric. You may make an argument that we need to do something about climate, and that's fair. You cannot do it at the expense of the rest of the public, and therein lies the problem. Whatever choice you make and however you go about implementing something that is for the better end of the public for some issue of climate, it has to always be cut and tilted against something that makes the public materially whole for them to allow you to go about doing what you do on the climate issue. First and foremost has to be their material needs. Joe Biden has answered a question like this again, and Joe Biden is called into something that I have a hell of a lot more experience than Joe Biden on. And I'm going to point out how ludicrous this is, his answer is. And not just ludicrous, I would go so far as to say it's somewhat disqualifying. There's a level of tone deafness into the way that he answers this, where he is in a bubble answering something to deflect from what is actually a real issue. How do you transition the public to a greener economy? Our world is hitting the skids. Cash is not a real thing, and yet our material needs are real. And those material needs, for the way that we've organized our system, are paid for, just in our case, by cash. We have incentives that people essentially run with those incentives, despite the fact that those incentives lead to bad outcomes for the world itself. But again, the material needs issue and people wanting to make more cash from the standpoint of status, all of those things get intermingled into our planet hitting the skids on this notion of environment. A real thing, by the way, despite the fact that the cash isn't. You got to deal with material needs. If you deal with people's material needs, they would allow you the leeway to deal with their issues, the issues of climate. I want to show Joe Biden's answer. I want to explain what's wrong with this answer. Joe Biden is essentially saying coal miners can go learn how to code. And this is put far too trivially, let's just say it that way. As somebody who's done code for almost a decade, he says this in a far too trivial way. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, so even $1 helps. If you guys hear whimpering in the background, I apologize. This week has been somewhat of a mad dash. We've been driving back and forth to DC because, again, we're moving to DC. I have a new radio show that's going to take place in the heart of DC, just a block or so away from the White House on Sputnik. It's going to go from 12 to 2, Monday through Friday. The dry runs of the show are going to begin, I think, on the 22nd of this month. And so I'm going to pump those through the show. Anything that happens on the radio station will also go through my channel, meaning every day from 12 to 2, starting on the 22nd, you will get the Progressive Soapbox. It'll be a show. Essentially, it will be the show that will be done at Sputnik, but it will come through my channel. And so I will be interacting with the audience and engaging with the audience on that. That will be far better quality because of different angles and everything else in their studio. And so that's what's taking place this year. But we're also in the process of moving. And so we will be moving on Saturday proper, but we've been moving stuff back and forth all week. The dog had an injury, and so if you hear him whimpering in the background, we just got him back from surgery. But he's okay. He's a big boy. I've done coding, or I did coding for nearly a decade. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was ill for, again, like a decade, as soon as from 17 on. And I was looking for something. I went into herbology, but I went into herbology with this notion of I'm going to cure myself because those doctors don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I ended up getting a degree in holistic nutrition. I ended up getting certificates from the standpoint of herbology. And then I thought, I can't do anything with this. And I need to eat and I need to feed myself. So I started going back to get my degree. But again, it was kind of all over the place. I met a woman in New York. She did software. She was a software engineer. And so I said, well, let me go for the software. That's as good as anything else. I had played chess for a very long time. I had excelled at it. My rating I eventually pushed up to over 2,000. And so my thought was, I've had a success at this. Well, I can apply that intellect for something else. I got my job in software eventually. It took forever because I had like a decade where I was in and out the hospital, but it took forever. I eventually got my degree. Associates, New York Institute of Technology, certificate for software engineering, software program applications. And I started working on the job. Now, software is similar to chess in the sense that when you first start it, and if you are very excited about it, you will do well. So it's kind of, think of it as in terms of a random guy you meet on the street. Would he know what the Faulkner counter gambit is? Probably not. But if you were heavy into chess, you would. Well, it's kind of the same way with software. Software continuously improves. The logic and the thought behind it continuously improves. And there are so many nooks and crannies that you would have to literally propel and invest yourself into in order to be able to get the full stuff out of it. You have people say, I don't understand how those people can sit there for hours and play this game. It looks like they're not moving. There's a lot of shit going on in their heads. And they've been doing it long enough and well enough to understand a lot of the logic and everything that's underlying it in order to have these magnificent games, or in the case of software, build these magnificent projects. We literally, especially in smaller shops, design and build worlds and environments. I've been commissioned to build all sorts of things, and we would have to understand how all of the logic will flow through various areas of a particular company and a particular system. Now, this is not as easy as it sounds because you have to have this stuff in your head in regards to mapping out how's the data going to flow, how does the data currently flow, what are the changes that need to take place in the way that data goes back from point A to point B, what are the processes that make it work. It's not just writing code and it's not just writing software. There's an aptitude and there's a desire associated with it, and both of those things need to meet. And if either one of those things falter, then your career as a software engineer is going to be short and it's going to be painful. You have to actually want to and enjoy doing it. And if you don't want to and enjoy doing it and you're doing it just for the sake of a job, you're going to suck at your job. Software, it's not as easy as it sounds. In software, it's not entirely just software. It is also planning, data, and so forth. If you don't like it, it's like pulling teeth. Even if you have the aptitude to do it, if you don't like it, it's like pulling teeth. This notion that I've heard some people mention, that people who are part of the current economy, be it, let's say, oil and gas, or in some kind of industry that pollutes, or it's some kind of company that does horrible, bad things, and that all of those people can just learn code. That's all. They can just pick up a book, they can learn code, and they can just go out and do code. Problem solved. I'm telling you, that is a ludicrous proposition. That is massively tone deaf, despite the fact that I've heard people say it. It is true that we need to transition our society over. The world is at the precipice, if not, has already gone the precipice, and we're just on our way down. We just don't know it yet. But you have to actually tackle that issue. And you can't be flippant with the learn code stuff. there are going to be several issues or several places in this country where we would have to transition, and us as a nation will have to give those people a time period and cover their expenses over a time period while we make that transition, seeing as it was no fault of their own, and their state, for the most part, powered this nation for years. Up until the point where we made the choice of saying, all right, no more of this. They can't all just learn code. That's my point. And it's too flippant of a response to say so. It is a bubble boy, tone deaf, in a tower looking down answer that actually belies the reality of the difficulty of the situation of saying we're transitioning into something else. And how do we keep those people whole? And you keep them whole for two reasons. One, because they were part of an industry that was powering our nation. But two, those people vote, and you don't necessarily want them to vote against you while you're in the process of your or our transition. This is Biden talking to the audience. Listen to what he says here.
I didn't know how to get it. Didn't know how to get it. The end result was not just because of me, but because of the team I put. I come from a family where, in an area where it's coal mining in Scranton. Anybody who could go down 300 to 3,000 feet in the mine, sure and hell can learn how to program as well.
Again, that's not true. I'm sorry, that's not true. What if they don't want to? What if they don't want to learn code? What if what they wanted to do was the coal mine thing? There's some people who would accept certain responsibilities or certain jobs. When people take a particular job, not everybody can do, nor do they want to do the exact same job. And they had a good paying job doing whatever they were doing. And now you're telling them they need to do something else. Now, you can kind of make a correlation from the standpoint of the healthcare industry, but the healthcare industry, yes, was a cancer on our particular society. Yes, I would even argue it's somewhat of an immoral industry. But these guys have been assisting this country for centuries. And like I said, these people vote. And if you're going to take an industry and you're going to get rid of that industry, you do have to pay attention to the people who are a part of that industry as that industry is being taken apart for other reasons. That's whether you're dealing with healthcare or whether you're dealing with energy. You can't say just in this flippant way that they can just learn code. Nor is it true that everyone that has a physical job where they go and they do a particular task and then they go home can or even want to learn how to sit at a desk and write code. What he just said here is not true.
But we don't think of it that way. Even my liberal friends don't. The president asked me to get Detroit out of its problems. Remember Detroit went bankrupt? And he gave me authority to do whatever I needed to do. So I set up with all the agencies. What is all the money out there Detroit could qualify for they didn't ask for? They didn't know how to get it. Didn't know how to get it. The end result was, not just because of me, but because of the team I put together, Detroit got out of bankruptcy. Started to come back. We were able to provide everything from street lighting for them that they didn't know they could have, and to inner city rail, that because 60% we put in a rail system. Anyway, make a long story short, things really started to move. And then we found out something interesting. Everybody, when things hit, went back. We didn't have anybody, not a joke, who could turn on the streetlights. You hear me? Not a joke. No one who knew how to turn on the sewer system. Because it requires computer capability and programming capability. And so we went out and hired this outfit that the major corporations hire when they need IT. They went out into the neighborhoods. They found 54, happened to be all women, not by intention, mostly women of color with a few exceptions, ages 24 to 20, 19-week training program at the community college there, learning how to program. And I remember telling people this, and my liberal friends were saying, you can't expect them to be able to do that. Give me a break.
My sound was off. I'll cut that in between. His liberal friend saying you can't expect him to do that. Give me a break. Look, it's not that nobody can do it. That's not my argument per se. We're talking about a massive change to our economy to transition it into a clean energy economy. That's our point. Well, that's the thing that we're talking about. In pursuit of that, will some people lose their jobs? That's the conversation that's taking place. Biden is making this argument about people can just become software engineers or some people can be coders. I hate to tell them this, but even those jobs are being automated to some degree. Look back at what coders used to make when they were doing websites. Nobody could do websites. Now websites become mostly WYSIWYGs. Those jobs are also becoming automated. That's the first point. The second point, just because you can find some people in a community, yes, doesn't necessarily mean those people or other, that clearly there are going to be more people in your society than just those. And yes, you'll find some people who are minors who may want to do code, but I'm telling you, the 50 weeks is not enough. It takes aptitude and it takes a desire and a burning desire to be able to do that stuff going on for years, not just weeks. This argument, I'm telling you, from somebody who's done software, who's worked in this industry, it is not that easy. And people are not just going to want to become quote unquote coders. They're not just going to want to become coders. Again, you can win the presidency, and if the public is whole and intact, they would allow you to do your Green New Deal. You cannot do your Green New Deal on the back of the public. And this notion that you're going to fire a bunch of people or people are going to lose their jobs because of this environmental change, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. I'll leave this here. Josephine Perlini, WRT climate change. No one ever talks about how trade affects the climate. The fuel used to ship steel to China to have to produce and ship back to us. The planned obsolescence factor. Also, Josephine Perlini, you're absolutely right. You buy a laptop. That laptop could be built in all sorts of ways, but it's built in a way that it would eventually fall apart or stop working. Most people just chuck it. But think of all the materials that make that laptop work. Think of all the minerals. Think of all of, you're talking about like gold, zinc, all of these things. All of the little pieces, all of the little equipment, all of the little gadget, all of those things had to be produced at some point. All of it chucked. And then you got to get another one. Now the thing is, if your laptop lasted for, let's say, 10 years, then somebody's going to go out of business because you're not going to have enough laptops. Essentially, we make them in a way that allows for the continued production of those laptops because people continuously are forced to buy them. Yeah, you're right. The way we build our stuff. Also, it's not just steel. It's also things like fruit. So she's talking about the environmental impact of having to ship something from point A to point B. Oftentimes the environment is not taken into account. It's only taken into account from the standpoint of dollars and cents. But how much it costs the environment to have to ship something to somewhere that already makes that product. Let's say like, I don't know, Haiti already has rice. But it's cheaper to ship rice into Haiti, so you destroy Haiti's ability in making that rice. But you also have just now taken a product somewhere that made enough of it to a place that had already made that product. This transit didn't need to take place. This transit took place because of some kind of trade deal or some kind of financial incentive for it to take place in those terms. Yeah, you're right, Josephine. You're absolutely right. Nobody talks about it, but it's there. Haiti has rice. Is it Haiti or Mexico? What was the place that had rice. They was making their rice crop, but it was cheaper to essentially take it and dump it there. I want to say Haiti. I think it's Haiti, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. All right. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.